Tino Antonacci made nothing but money off me. I'd be at Basta Pasta at 2 in the morning with 4 or 5 guys. We'd be off. There's no way he's going to get on the air tomorrow. No way. This is when I was working from 10 to 2. Tino would go, I'll bet you $100 right now he's on the air tomorrow, and you won't even notice that he was out. So I'd come on, hey, everybody, Mike North here on WSCR, The Score, along with Dan Jiggets. Mike, how you doing today? I'm doing good, Jigs. Everything going good. What'd you do last night? I was on the world tour last night, but you know me, when the red light goes on, and then we'd go to a break, I'd go, oh. And then we'd go back on. Bing, bang, boom. Right? Because nobody driving that's listening to me or any of the guys at The Score wanted to hear that shit, that you're hungover. Nobody wants to hear that. Hey, everybody, we're Metallica. We're tired from last night. They don't do that. Hey, I'm Mick Jagger. We're going to put on a show if we can, but we were out late last night, right? Hey, Sinatra. Last night I was drunk till 4 in the morning. We'll try to give you what you want. They just go out and do it. I live large.
Look, I don't mean any disrespect. He just didn't play that well. Not for a guy of his caliber.
If they don't run the ball here, I'm going to vomit. I swear to God.
I don't really have any recollection of that at all, but I guess perhaps I blacked it all out.
You know, they won, but I'm going to be miserable all week because they stunk. Hey everybody, it's Aldo Gandhi, and I just want to let you know really quickly that our swag shop is reopened. DeepDishTees.com is where you go, and that's tees with T-E-E-S. Clever name, guys. They're the new home of our merchandise. You can get t-shirts, you can get caps, you can get coffee mugs, you can get hoodies, you can get all sorts of good stuff, and you'll help out the barroom with the purchase. So head over to DeepDishTees.com. Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of Greg Gabriel Talks Football. To me, this is like the debut episode of the 2021 Barroom Network Bears coverage. This really is the first show after the draft and after all our draft coverage that we are devoting to the Chicago Bears' upcoming season. And Greg, it is so great to see you again. You look like you just got out of the weight room and also going for a nice 45-minute bike ride.
Yeah, I did. And took a shower too, so I wouldn't stink up the screen. Yeah.
You look in great shape. Are you feeling as well as you look?
Yeah. No, I'm for an old fart, I'm in as good a shape as many.
Yeah, and what's the latest with the XFL? We know they're coming back. What have you heard? And I'm excited about the news that they're going to resume activities.
Well, yeah, but resume activities was supposed to be next spring, and that's not going to happen. So now they're saying the following spring. I don't know. They had talks with the CFL about doing a merger. Those fell apart a couple of weeks ago. Then there's this news about the so-called USFL coming back, and all that was some people from the Spring League bought the name. You know, the name was out there; it was available. They paid for it. That's what my understanding is, anyway. So it's not like the USFL coming back; it's the name. But I really think it's just the people that run the Spring League that want to use that name to help the entity, so to speak. But
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were not competition for us, you know, as far as what they pay players. In fact, you know, I don't know what the salary structure was this year, but before this, basically the players were paying to play there,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so they'd get seen. And then we were, you know, we had tape all those games and we took players off of those rosters,
Right.
you know, in our draft.
Right. I refuse to believe that something like the XFL loses money. There is such a thirst for football in this country. Now, what are the economics of a league like the XFL? Did they lose money? And now, obviously, we know why they suspended the season because of the pandemic.
Yeah, it was strictly the pandemic, Ella. We were, as far as meeting expectations and projections for the 2020 season, we did it. You know, in fact, we were ahead of expectations.
Wow.
TV ratings wise, attendance wise, everything. So, and until really the day before they pulled the plug, that they told us, we were still, you know, we were having conference calls and making plans for next year and everything else. But I get what happened, and part of it had to do with, you know, Vince McMahon was, you know, couldn't make any money back on his XFL investment, and he wasn't making any money on the WWE because they were shut down. You know, everything was shut down, and it just became, okay, you got to cut your losses somewhere, and we're the ones that got cut. Is there a thirst for it? Is it a good thing? Yeah, the people in the NFL want an XFL. You know, they want some sort of minor league, and they'd love to have, if you talk to executives in the NFL, they'd love to have a working agreement with the XFL to be able to send players, much like NFL Europe was. NFL Europe was owned by the league. It just became too expensive to do it because it was coming out of the owner's pockets. Well, you know, you get a foreign league, so to speak, you know, their own entity. You know, now it's not a cost to the NFL. Now, you can have an argument, okay, if they send you 5 or 6 players per club to the league, who's going to pay those guys? Is it going to be paid? They're going to be paid by us. They're going to be paid by the league, or maybe shared cost or something like that. And that was all stuff that was on the table when the cord got cut. So, you know, it's a wait and see now. Who knows?
And one last question on the XFL before we start talking about the monsters of the Midway. When you scouted, I'm imagining every player that was in that league. What percentage of those players you think could play at some level in the NFL?
Well, you know, I don't know remember what the number was. There were guys that played in the XFL that went to NFL camps and ended up playing. Right. I don't think it was a high percentage. Part of it was I think a lot of it was the circumstances due to last year. You had no off-season program. You had really no training camp.
Yeah.
You know, there's guys that were probably good enough to make teams last year, and I'm not talking XFL. I'm just talking guys who are in training camp that didn't make teams because there's no preseason. You know, so they really didn't get to show. So now it became a guessing game. So your roster was made up, you know, basically at draft day and on what you thought guys could do. And maybe there was a surprise here, a surprise there in training camp, but you didn't have that game situation. But now, you know, this year, which brings up an interesting fact, is that I'm really interested in seeing how coaches are going to treat preseason now with 3 games versus 4. You know, under the old formula, you know, your starters might not have played in the first game or a series and a half. That was, and then didn't even dress for the last game. You know, so they basically saw action in game 2 and 3. Well, this year you only have 3 games,
right? And
there's after the 3rd game, there's 2 weeks. So the timing of the games is the same, except that fourth week, now there's no game. And so now you got 2 weeks to prepare for your opener. So now, do you sit everybody out in that third game, or are you going to play them because you got 2 weeks until the opener?
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be kind of an interesting dynamic going forward. And I don't think any of us had the answer right now until we see how they're going to do it. And I'm sure some teams will play guys, and other teams are going to treat game 3 just like they treated game 4. We're playing the young guys and, hope they don't get hurt, and, we got to put them on IR.
Right. It is interesting because Matt Nagy said prior to last season that he was going to play the starters more in preseason, and now with one less preseason, we'll see if he sticks to that philosophy. And if that's the case, there's going to be a lot of young guys that are probably going to see limited opportunities to make this team. And it's just going to make it really challenging, I suppose, for talent evaluators on this team.
Well, I think that, your length of training camp's the same. So, as far as the evaluation, and you got, I think they got one joint practice set up with that with Miami.
Correct.
Before they play the Dolphins in the preseason. They're going to have plenty of time. You got stuff that you couldn't do last year that you're going to do this year. And then you're also hoping, and probably more so this year, is second-year players always take a huge jump. Last year, guys like Mooney, to be able to do what he did with virtually no offseason and no training camp and no preseason, to come in and play the way he did, that's kind of remarkable. So, I think it's almost like 2 rookie classes this year, because you're going to get guys that, were kind of struggling last year. And now they're going to they're going to be used to what's going on. So they're veterans, but at the same time, they're still raw as compared to some of the other people. And some of those like late draft choice offensive linemen, they had Simmons and those guys, even though they've brought in other offensive linemen, it'll be interesting to see what they do.
For sure. Yeah, this camp is going to be one of the more intriguing in Bears' recent history because, of course, for many reasons, but first and foremost, Justin Fields. And so what are your thoughts regarding how Matt Nagy has announced that he's going to bring Justin Fields along? There is no quarterback competition. Andy Dalton is definitely going to start game 1. What are your thoughts about this approach?
I don't disagree with it, and he goes back to what happened with Patrick Mahomes. And you could say that Alex Smith is a little bit further ahead than Andy Dalton is, but similar type, quarterbacks. What I think is going to happen is if they're winning with Andy Dalton's still going to play. Okay, you get to the 4th or 5th game of the season and they're 1-3, 2-3, something like that. Well, then the cord might be pulled and all of a sudden Justin Fields is the quarterback. I think a lot depends on how this team is playing, and we're not going to know the answer to that. I think he's in those 3 games. I think you're going to see him play a lot of football because you're going to want to see how he handles things under the heat of an NFL game. Even though it's teams aren't showing anything, you're still going to see how he handles everything.
And you've shared your opinion on our shows here about Justin Fields, but I'm not sure I've gotten your at-length opinion about Andy Dalton. Do you still think he's got gas left on the tank? What is his high side at this point in his career? Can he lead this team to a division championship?
Okay, I describe Andy Dalton this way, and I'll go back to a term we used when I was working there when you were describing pro players. And you can win because of him or you win with him. Okay. I think you win with him, not because he's not a difference maker. He's got to be part of the whole, so to speak.
Right.
And this guy's gone to some Pro Bowls. He's taken teams to the playoffs. He's not chopped liver. He's not bad. You see stuff, videos of him working out. He's in great shape. For a quarterback, he's still a young guy.
Yeah.
As compared to, what's playing in the league now. Aaron Rodgers could be 38 or is 38 right now. What's Brady, 44? Something like that.
Yeah.
Guys play a long time. Drew Brees played till he's 41. Andy Dalton, he's a youngster.
He really is. I like Andy Dalton. I've always thought that he was a better than average quarterback. And the second half of the season last year with the Cowboys, he put up some impressive numbers, not albeit against some suspect defenses, but still he did it. And
you still got to do it. You can't help who you're playing.
Exactly.
Okay, you play the teams on your schedule. He wasn't supposed to be the quarterback. He's supposed to be a solid backup for Dak Prescott. Prescott got hurt. Andy came in. He played pretty good football. And, I don't think Dallas has as good a team as the Bears had.
Definitely.
So they definitely didn't have a defense. So you put the poor guy in a situation where they're always playing catch up. Well, we know with this defense, the games are going to be close. So now he's got to make the plays. I think, for the good of the team and for the good of Justin Fields, Fields is a competitor. He wants to play. I guarantee he wants to play. But what's best for him in the long run?
Right.
Because you put a young guy in, Jets are going to play with their young quarterback. Jacksonville's going to play with their young quarterback. Okay, what if those teams get killed? What's going to happen to the confidence of those guys?
Right.
And that I think that's, there's pluses and minuses to both sides of the argument. But I don't disagree with what Matt wants to do.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that worries me about the Chicago Bears is the offensive line and the lack of depth, I would say, at the tackle position, especially the left tackle. Do you have the same concerns that I do?
No. I number one, I think Tevin Jenkins is going to be a pretty good player. It's not like he's never played the game. He's played 8 games. Now, how about this? And I was just looking at this last night. Rashaan Slater from Northwestern, who was the second tackle playing, he's got 1 season at left tackle. He opted out of 2020.
That's right.
He played 2019 at left tackle. 2 years before that, he was right tackle. Okay, so in the case of Tevin Jenkins, he started 8 games. He was supposed to be the starter all last year at left tackle. The right tackle gets hurt. The backup was more comfortable playing on the left side than the right side, and Tevin volunteered to play the right side, even though probably for his career would have been better for him to play on the left, but he still got 8 starts on the left side. Athletically, if you look at all his testing numbers, he's right up there with the better left tackles in the league. So it's a matter of really repetition as far as your footwork. And you think about it this way. A lot of times you draft a rookie lineman, and even though he's a left tackle, you might have a left tackle on your team, and you put him over on the right side to get adjusted to the game. And then when your other guy is ready to retire, or you can just cut him or whatever, then you shift the guy over. Well, going from the left to the right what's the difference between going from the right to the left? It's the opposite footwork.
Right.
You got your right leg back on the right side. You got your left leg back on the left side. And your hand use is the opposite of what it was. So it really becomes a case of just repetition, getting used to your footwork, playing on the opposite side.
One of the things that I find most fascinating about people in your line of work, talent evaluators, is that whole aspect of projecting. Because, let's face it, the college football game is not the pro game. There's differences and so forth. And so when you look at a guy like Jenkins and you look at a guy like Mooney and so forth, you have to do a lot of projecting. Are these guys' talents going to fit in the NFL? And then secondly, with our particular team and what we run. And so am I right or wrong? Is that one of the more fascinating aspects about what you do?
Yeah, but then there's guys, and Mooney's a great example. If people thought Mooney was going to do what he did, you weren't going to get him in the 5th round. He would have gone in the 2nd round.
Right.
Okay. So he far exceeded draft day expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He's a competitor. He's a hard worker. The only thing he lacks is size.
Mm-hmm.
It's great size. And but he plays tough. You've seen him go inside, take the big hits.
Yeah.
He's a little guy, but what he reminds me of? He's a little shorter version, but a similar body structure to Bernard Berrien.
Okay. Wow. Big play, Bernard Berrien. He had a lot of success and then went on to the Minnesota Vikings and played.
Right. Yeah, we drafted Bernard when he was here. It was actually Lovey's first year, so it was 2004 we drafted him.
Mm-hmm.
And Bernard was a string bean when you looked at him. He was like 6'2", but he weighed about 180 pounds. And I'm sure Mooney is going to get a little bit bigger between last year and this year. He's been in an off-season program, an NFL off-season program. Is he going to get a lot bigger? Is he going to be over 190? Probably not, but he'll be stronger. He'll be able to, fight off press coverage a little bit easier. I think his stamina and stuff will be better. With the wide receivers, the main question is what's going to happen with Anthony Miller. Is he going to, he's leveled off and he's got a few screws loose, so he's got to mature.
Yeah.
And, there was talk that he was going to they're going to try to trade him during the offseason. He's too talented to give up on.
Yeah.
So, I think now this camp is the last chance, and it's going to be up to him to, shit or get off the pot, basically.
You think that if he has a poor camp, that there's a chance that they will give up on him?
Yeah, I do. Because I think there was talk of letting him go during the off season.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that was media talk, but Bigsy's the one who broke that, and he usually has pretty good information.
Right. Let's take a look at the list of wide receivers that are currently on the roster. This is the week of July 19th for those of you who are watching this on demand, perhaps a week or two later. These are the guys that are on the rosters. And when you look at these first 3 names, Rodney Adams, he ran a 4.44 at his pro day. And you've tutored me on, what that means. So take that for whatever it's worth. But Bird and Goodwin, these guys are speedsters. What do you think about the fact that the Bears really went out and acquired a lot of speed in this offseason?
Well, as we were saying before the show started, there was a trend, and I say a trend because there was a lot of names. It wasn't 1 or 2 that went on this year early in the draft, and starting with Jalen Waddle in the first round. Then in the second round, you had 4: Elijah Moore, Rondell Moore, Dwayne Eskridge, and Tutu Atwell. All of them are small but very fast receivers.
Mm-hmm.
And, you could call them gadget guys. And they're smaller than Mooney small. Mm-hmm. Except for, I think Waddle might be about the same size, maybe even a little thicker than Mooney. But, all these other guys, Tutu Atwell probably weighs $145. He's a tiny guy, but he can run. Well, the Bears wanted more speed. They went out and got Marquise Goodwin. And I don't want to hear that, he might be 29 or 30 years old. He can't run. He's still one of the fastest guys in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he qualified this year to be able to jump in the Olympic trials, which were just a few weeks ago. And to qualify to get into the Olympic trials, he had to jump 26 feet 7 inches just to meet the standard to perform in that meet. Now, he didn't perform real well in that meet, but he had hit the standard previously. You don't jump 26 feet 7 inches unless you can really run and be explosive. He's always been one of the fastest guys in the league. He's still one of the fastest guys. Demir Beard is, kind of had a coming out party last year. He's been with a few clubs. He was I think he was part-time, wasn't a full-time player in college, but he ran a 4.29 when he came out. Very, very fast. He's got some return skills, kickoff more than punt. Doesn't have that real big receiving radius. He's more in here, but you don't see drops. But he caught 40-something passes last year in New England. Most of those were coming from Cam Newton, so he was getting fastballs. He wasn't getting the soft, slow ball that some guys are throwing you.
Okay.
And he made some big plays for them. So, it'll be interesting to see, do both of those guys make the team? I don't know. I can see one, and I think then a lot will depend on what happens with Anthony Miller.
Right.
Because Anthony Miller got a lot of speed too now.
Yeah.
And he's got to play up to his ability, the consistency, and pay attention to detail. He's known for being late for meetings, late for practice, a costly drop here and there, and that's maturity. That's nothing more than maturity
and just self-discipline, right?
Yes.
He
Yes.
seems like he can get a little wild at times.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you about Thomas Ives, because when I first saw him at the 2019 in his rookie year at training camp, I was super impressed with his play. 6'4". Now, he played at Colgate. There wasn't a whole hell of a lot of production there. I'm not sure what kind of an offense they run, but it's definitely not a pass offense. But he was the team captain. He had leadership skills. What do you know about Ives that you can share with us?
He's a big guy. He's 6'4". He's probably 215, 280. He can run, though. I mean, he was like a 4.45 guy at Colgate's pro day, jumped out of the building. So, I mean, you look at the 40 and the long jump and the vertical jump, and they should correlate. So a fast guy should jump high and jump far.
Right.
And there's usually something off, at least explosiveness wise, if they don't correlate together.
Okay.
He did all those things well. Obviously, he's raw. He did do some good things. I thought he would come on last year, but given the circumstances of last year, he might not have even had the opportunity or the chance.
Yeah.
So that's going to be what's going to happen to him this year, and he could now. It's his third year. He could be one of those guys that kind of jumps out at camp, and we'll see. It wouldn't shock me. Usually, you keep 6 wide receivers. If some of these guys really show they can play, it wouldn't shock me if they keep 7.
Yeah.
Put that list back up, because I'll.
Here it comes.
Okay, I don't think Javon Wims is going to be around this year, especially if a guy like Ives comes on. Wims had the stupid play when he started punching the guy in the one game. He dropped the 1 touchdown pass that was right there. And then the other thing, he's obviously here this year. He signed his franchise tag contract, but I think this is the last year we see Allen Robinson. Wow.
That hurt. That really hurts.
Well, I'll tell you what. It's the circle of life in the NFL. If this is the last year, you had him for what, 5-6 years? Between and he's been a very, very good player. But don't forget, they signed him as a free agent, and he's looking. What everybody thinks anyway is. North of $20 million a year contractually.
Wow.
And Bears don't want to give him that much. Okay. He's 17.8 this year on the tag. maybe if they offered him something just average what the tag is, they'd have a deal, but they don't. So next year he could become a free agent. Now you can tag him again, but that's gonna go up by 20%.
Right.
I think that's the number. So it's going to be roughly 21.5 million to keep, and that's hard 21.5 million. You don't have anything offset with a signing bonus to keep him next year. So unless you get a long-term deal worked out, and now you can't do it. I think if you're going to get a long-term deal done, it would be done. My thinking is the Bears think, we'll just go into free agency and get another guy, and it isn't going to cost us anywhere near what it's going to cost to keep him around. That's me saying that. I don't know if that's their thought,
right?
But I'm just looking at the economics of it, and what are the facts of life in the National Football League? You get a guy in free agency originally. If you keep him around for 5-6 years like they had, you had a hell of a signing first time. And then it's rosters change by a minimum of 25% every year. So, and sometimes more.
And I've been saying, I've been guessing that the Bears will sign him to a long-term contract. Obviously, that's not going to happen this year, as you just said. But the rationale behind it was, don't you want to have a Robinson-Mooney combo for Justin Fields for the next 4 or 5 years, so that young quarterback can have reliable targets that he's practiced with every day, and make his transition to the NFL much easier. But that's not as high a priority, you're saying, than the economics part of it.
Well, yeah, you'd like to, but what's reality? Now, don't forget, let's look at the cap situation. The cap dropped dramatically. Okay. And it's come back for 2021, but it's still a good 10, 12 million below what it should be when you were making these original projections when you signed some of these people. And now next year it'll go up. And you got some new TV contracts, and that'll help it go up. But it's still not going to be. They're sharing some of the losses that they took last year over the next couple of years on the cap. So the cap still, it's probably 2 to 3 years before the cap gets back to where it's supposed to be.
Right.
So now you got tough decisions to make. And if you look at, there's free agent guys who had franchise tags like Allen Robinson, who are one is the kid down in Tampa Bay from Penn State. Okay, he didn't get a long-term deal done. There's going to be guys like him, Juju Smith. Yeah. He's going to be available. There's players that are going to be available next year, and they aren't going to cost you $21 million a year. Right. And if you use the tag, Robinson's tag was 17.8 because of what he was making the year before. So but the normal tag for a wide receiver was 15 million and change. So now if you can get a guy and pay him average of 16, 17, 18 million average, it's still, and then when you figure in the signing bonus, it's still going to be a lot less than what you're going to have to pay for Robinson.
Yeah.
Are you going to have a drop off? Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe you end up getting a better player. Robinson's taking a chance not doing a long term deal either. Because what if he doesn't play good this year?
Yeah, that's a tough situation. You're absolutely right. A-Rob, who has gone through this before, it was that injury that he had in the very first game of his contract year with the Panthers that made him available to the Chicago Bears.
Jaguars.
Jaguars. Yep. At a very handsome price. So
right.
Just taking a look at some of the wide receivers who are scheduled to be free agents in 2022, besides Robinson, Chris Godwin with the Bucks,
That's what I just mentioned, yeah.
Right? Devontae Adams, Will Fuller, Robbie Anderson.
I wouldn't touch Will Fuller. I don't think he's got consistent hands. I've never been a fan. I wasn't a fan when he was at Notre Dame. He can run like the wind.
Yep.
He drops a lot of balls.
Yeah.
He's not a sure-handed guy.
Yeah, I'm with you 110% on that. Guys who don't have reliable hands, I really don't want them playing wide receivers for the Chicago Bears. So Juju Smith-Schuster, as you mentioned, Emmanuel Sanders, who will be 35, 36 years old at that point, so that probably is not a good idea. There's a John Brown. Wow,
he's another guy that's the Bills didn't bring him back because he started to go downhill.
So there's some intriguing names, but we'll continue to monitor that. Now, the running back position, I think, is really deep on this team, particularly if Tariq Cohen comes back at 100%. And I know he's going to be playing the gadget slot position 90% of the time, but he'll line up at the running back position. But with David Montgomery and the guy they picked up from the Kansas City Chiefs, whose name is eluding me right now, Damian Williams.
Yep.
That position looks really strong, and I'm really hopeful that there's going to be a
and you drafted Khalil Herbert from Virginia Tech, who's a good football player.
Yes.
And a guy who can run. I mean, he's another sub 4.5 running back.
So you're feeling good about this position, right?
Yeah, as long as they stay healthy.
As long as they call running plays. At the tight end position, what are your thoughts about Jimmy Graham coming back for what will probably be his last NFL season?
He had a hell of a year last year. I don't understand why there's a lot of people say, why don't they cut Jimmy Graham? Why would you cut him? The guy, he what do you have? 8 touchdowns or something? I don't have the stats.
8.
Big plays. He's actually a better blocker now than he ever was at any earlier point in his career. And he's not great. He's far from being great, but he's better than he was. You get by with him. And now you got Komet going into his second year, too. I think the tight end situation's in good hands. I really do. And Jimmy Graham's still a hell of an athlete.
He really is. I'm glad. Now, the only argument that I heard, and I'm pretty sure it was Olin Kreutz was talking about this on his podcast. He said, by releasing Charles Leno Jr. and keeping Jimmy Graham, it tells you a lot about the Bears organization and how they value offensive linemen. So that was kind of a knock that Kreutz had about the organization. What are your thoughts on that comment?
Well, number one, Jimmy Graham wasn't making what Charles Leno was making. And who was more productive at his position for the year? And don't just look at last year, look at the year before. Now, we've all sat and complained about Charles Leno. Charles Leno overachieves. He's durable as hell. He's been, fairly consistent player, but he also gives up some costly sacks. Like it or not, he's not even 6'4". He was 6'3" and 7/8 when he came out, but he's got pretty long arms. Okay, now people have been complaining for years they haven't spent a premium draft choice on a tackle. Well, this year they spent a premium draft choice on a tackle, and you want to get him in the game and play. Now, had they not been able to trade up and get that guy, and look at it, if you look at the way guys came off the board. There was only one tackle left at 52 or 53, wherever the hell they were picking. And I think Tennessee or somebody took him as a kid from North Dakota State, who's a pretty good player.
Dylan Randunes, I believe.
Yeah, right. And he, but still taking a big jump going from FCS level competition at North Dakota State. To say being a starter in the NFL, where there's a lot of people that thought Tevin Jenkins was a legitimate first rounder. They got him with the 7th pick in the second round. And if you look at how offensive lineman came out, he was the 4th tackle taken. 4th tackle taken usually goes in the first round. But you had a lot of wide receivers go.
Right.
And 5 quarterbacks. Go in the first round. So that had knocked somebody down.
Right. Interesting. Okay, let's turn our attention now to the defense, and the one player I want to start with is Robert Quinn, because I think that if Robert Quinn can have a better than average season, I'm not saying a great season, I'm not saying double digit sacks, but a little bit better than an average season, that could be a huge key to the entire defense in creating more turnovers and getting more sacks and helping Khalil Mack get to the quarterback more and so forth. What are your thoughts about Robert Quinn? What does he have left? Was this a good signing by Ryan Pace? Your thoughts?
Well, based off of last year's play, it wasn't. Now he was disruptive, but he didn't have sack production. And his overall play, I think, was not what they had hoped it would be.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see, they gave up on their first round pick from before, Leonard Floyd, and Floyd goes out to LA and just has a career year out in LA. So it's like, did we do the right thing? Maybe we should have given that money to Leonard Floyd. But at the same time, I think one of the reasons you got a new defensive coordinator is because the pass rush the last few years just hasn't been the way it was when Vic Fangio was running the defense. And now, so I think there's things that play into this that are behind the scenes, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And they were disappointing in the way some guys were utilized, and I think part of that's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And so, right off the bat, with Desai going to be coordinating the defense now, I think just the change is they're going to put more of an emphasis on rushing passer. Don't forget, Khalil Mack's numbers have gone down too.
Yep.
And so. What was that? And Danny Trevathan, the first half of last year was terrible.
Oh my goodness.
So they made a change. They decided, and Danny came out and he had a strong second half of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So the organization looked at it from, I think we got to make a change at the coaching position. It's not the players. And so from that standpoint, I think it'll be interesting. How it all plays out this year.
Yeah, Chuck Pagano is a great guy, an excellent football coach, but it does seem like from a defensive coordinator perspective is that he didn't it's I hate to say this, but it's like the game has passed him up a little bit in terms of, what we see guys like Brandon Staley, the former Bears linebacker. He goes to the Rams, calls their defense, does tremendous, is now a head coach. Vic Fangio is an innovator at the defensive play calling position. And hopefully Sean Desai, who has worked with both of those gentlemen, is going to be able to duplicate some of that success. And Pagano just didn't seem to be able to adapt to new defenses.
Yeah, and just the overall play of some people dropped off. Look at safety Jackson.
Yeah.
His production, his interception production has gone downhill.
But
so there's a lot of guys where you were expecting things from.
Right.
That it didn't happen. And it was it more scheme.
Yeah. Do you think that had something to do with Fangio's scheme and play calling?
Well, yeah, there's I know in Pagano defense, it was more strong and free at safety.
Okay.
Where Fangio was left and right.
Mm-hmm. Now, help me understand that, because I'm not sure I know what you're talking about.
Well, in other words, that in Fangio's defense, one guy's the left safety, one guy's the right safety.
Okay, I get you now. And then the other way around is you have.
So you're really depending on the formation, and depending on what the offense is doing, you could be strong or you could be free.
Right.
And, it's just how you utilize the position.
Right.
And so I think, from that standpoint, and the coverage schemes are different.
Right.
So, and then, let's get into cornerback play a little bit here. And I had to do an exercise for another thing that I'm doing, and it had to do with, corners in the league, how long they're playing, etc. And I was actually surprised when I did this study, and it wasn't too long ago. The results, the corner is a very young man's position.
Mm-hmm.
The bulk of the corners in the league are 5 years and less.
Oh, wow.
And once you get higher than say 7, 8 years experience, there aren't too many. The numbers really start to drop off. So now you start saying, okay, well, they let Fuller go. And part of that was money, and that's the economics of what happened with COVID.
Right.
But at the same time, they got some young guys. They drafted a guy last year in the second round, and they drafted a guy in the 5th or 6th round, Kendall Lildore from Georgia Southern. I think Lildore is going to have a good year. I loved his tape coming out. He was aggressive, great ball skills. He's only 5'10", but he's got like 32.5-inch arms, which makes him play like a 6-footer. He's got good size, good strength. He can run like hell. Now this guy's he's a low 4.4, high 4.3 guy. Very quick and explosive. Trufant they bring in. Trufant's played some good football. I think the thinking is, can we get a good year out of him? And then you drafted Graham late, and I think to be fair, Graham opted out, and there's guys that opted out, didn't play last year, that got penalized.
Right.
Okay, and I think it depended on the situation. If the guy was a legitimate top 15 type of guy, he didn't get penalized, but those other guys, those mid-round guys,
right,
they all got penalized. He was probably a 3rd-round pick had he played. When you look at his tape from the year before, from 2019, and you get him real late. So, I mean, some players like that, you could end up with a bargain.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to tell you, I don't look at tape like you and Danny and Neil do. I look at highlights, and so his highlight reel is super impressive. That kid could be a surprise. Maybe
his transition is very, very quick. He's got no wasted steps in transition, and he's got great ball skills. And he's not afraid to hit. So, all told, when you look what's playing in the league, I get it. Oh my God, we lost a all-pro caliber player in Fuller. Yeah, you did. But if you had sat down, it took me actually, I'm going to say 14, 15 hours of work doing this one study. And when I saw the results, I was shocked at how many corners that are really young that are playing a legitimate role in the league. You just got to give them a chance. Yeah. And they weren't all top round draft choices.
What about Duke Shelley, the 5'8"? He's now 24 years old. This is going to be his 3rd season, and the year came out of Kansas State. Undersized, of course, but do you think that he's got a future in the NFL?
No. Yeah. I don't like 5'8" corners.
Especially on the outside.
Well, yeah. I mean, even at the slot, but you're putting big guys, and a lot of times in the slot now you got that move tight end.
Right.
So you're going to put a 5'8" guy on a 6'4" guy who can run? No, I don't think so. I just, they got to be real, real special. Okay, now he's stuck around for 2 years. You want better, my opinion.
Yeah.
The coaching staff may love him. I don't know, but I just think that you're going to keep probably 5 corners. You got Artie Burns, who got hurt last year.
Right.
He was a starter for a number of years at Pittsburgh.
1st-round draft pick.
Yep. Xavier Crawford is not, he's not chopped liver. He's got some talent. Drafted Thomas Graham, Jalen Johnson, Michael Joseph. He's got to do something this year, or he'll be gone. Trey Robinson, another guy that got hurt. He was a Canadian League All-Star.
Mm-hmm.
and a big time. So I just think that, you know, Tease Tabor was a second round pick and had a big reputation coming out of Florida, but he can't run. He ran 4.7, and that's just not fast enough. He's got good quickness, great body control, but he's not very fast. But I think when you look at that Kendall Lildore, Desmond Trufant, you're going to find 5 corners that you're going to like better than Duke Shelley.
Mm-hmm. Michael Joseph is now 26 years old. Man, he's only in his second year in his league. But Tishon.
Well, he's been a practice squad guy, but he was a guy. You know, he played one of the All-Star games. I think it was a Senior Bowl, and you know, he played it at the Division III level. He was a trait guy, and you know, he had the size, he had the speed, he had the athleticism, but he's played against Division III competition his whole football career. So, you know, it's either you make the jump or you don't. And so far he hasn't made the JS flashes, but you got to see more than flashes. You got to see some consistency.
Yeah. At the safety position alongside Eddie Jackson, everybody is expecting Tishon Gibson to come back. And he is back with the team. He is signed, but he is expected to be the starter alongside Eddie Jackson. I was really impressed with his play last year, especially as the season went on. It seemed like he got better and better.
Right. He's played well. DeAndre Houston Carson played well. And now you got a couple guys didn't play last year. He opted out. Jordan Lucas, who was a pretty good player in Kansas City. Okay. So you've got some competition there. You know, is the opt-out going to be held against some of these guys? I think it really depends on what they do when they get to camp. And, you know, name number one would be Eddie Goldman.
Yeah.
Now we've seen these videos. I don't know if you saw them. On Twitter of Goldman working out in town, and he looks in good shape. He's strong, pushing that sled with 1,000 pounds on it. Now that obviously that's not football, but he's not doing that unless he took care of himself the time he had off.
Yeah.
I know Biggsy's had some a column that, you know, maybe he's thinking about retiring. I don't think he'd be in town the last couple of weeks working out if that was the case. I think he'd be wherever home is and sitting home.
I agree with you. Danny Trevathan said he spoke with Eddie Goldman and told him that Eddie told Danny that he's coming back next season, but it was weird that he did not show up for the mandatory OTA
minicamp.
Mandatory
minicamp, yeah. It costs you money too. So I mean, you know,
it's like over $100,000. It's nice to, you know, lose $100,000 and not worry about it, right?
I'll tell you, if somebody even thought about finding me $100,000, trust me, I'm going to be
there. Exactly. So the interior, those front three guys on that 3-4, and of course they play a lot of 4-down linemen as well. Any concerns there? Do you think that a guy like Bilal Nichols could really jump off the screen like he did in the second half of the season last year? And is he somebody that is expendable? Because he's on the last year of his contract. I would hope that, boy, we got to keep this guy. You found him in the middle rounds out of Delaware. Yeah, you nurture these guys. Don't let them go like Adrian Amos. Your thoughts?
I think if he continues to play, now he's had a little bit of a knee issue. What none of us know is how serious is that knee issue. Right. You know, he misses time during practice. If it's not a big deal, yeah, he's going to be a guy that's going to get extended. Don't forget, last year he played a little out of position. Now he played some nose when he was in college,
right? And
he played a lot of nose last year. But now he's going to be more at the 5, and where he's going to be better because Eddie's going to be back. And I'll tell you, Guy, since we've done this, since the last time we did this show, they didn't have it. They signed that guy who played really good football out of Green Bay, Pinnell.
Mike Pinnell, yeah.
Guy's a good football player.
He is. Yeah.
Okay, he's not a pass rusher, but he is a run-stuffing SOB. And he's tough to move off the ball. and he can. I think the whole reason they signed him was because there was a question mark on Goldman. But now if you got the two of them, that's good. And then the rookie, he's going to either push somebody or he's going to be on the practice squad.
Mm-hmm.
The kid from BYU.
Yeah. Kyrie's Tonga is his name,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Danny's not real high on Tonga. Well, Neil, our other in-house scouting person, likes him a lot. So it's going to be interesting to see who's.
Well, I like the way he plays. There's only one negative to him, in my opinion. He's got short arms.
Yeah.
And short arm guys don't always, at the nose you can get away with it, and that's what he is. He's a pure nose.
And you know what's funny about that, Greg, is that I think he had like a couple of blocked punts or kicks, even with those short arms. So he's got a good instinct. And that's probably how he's going to make this team, is to excel at special teams, right?
But how often do nose tackles play on special teams? It's not like they're going to run down on punts and kickoffs.
Right.
They're going to be on field goal block, stuff like that.
Right.
But the problem with short arms is that line play is a lot of leverage.
Mm-hmm.
And when you got shorter arms, you lose the leverage. Now, if you're strong and you know how to use your hands, you overcome it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's a guy we talk about who's going to be in the Hall of Fame pretty soon, who's got short arms. That's Olin Cruz. He's got 31.5-inch arms. But, how many centers were better than he was? But again, an inside player, you can get away with it. If you got a guard playing with 32.5-inch arms, it's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But your tackles, they better have some length.
Now, you talked about Danny Trevathan. I want to get your thoughts overall on that inside linebacker position, and specifically also, how much better can Roquan Smith become as an inside linebacker? Because if he has the kind of season I suspect he's going to have, which is going to be like superstar status.
I think he's a pro. I think he can become a Pro Bowl player.
Yeah, a guy that could break the bank when he becomes his contract comes up, right?
Right. Now, there's a couple names I'll throw out.
Okay.
And especially because Danny had that poor first half of the season. Now, it going to cost money to cut him.
Yes.
Because he had a new contract from, a couple of years ago. But okay, we talked about this on the last show we did.
Mm-hmm.
There's a rookie free agent that I love. Now I want to see what he does against the big boys.
Okay.
But his college tape is one of the most important traits an inside linebacker has to have is instinct. You can't be a reactor.
Mm-hmm.
You got to anticipate.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy anticipates. You can use the term Bill Parcells used to use. The ball finds him. He doesn't find the ball finds him. He's always making plays. And that's Caleb Johnson from Houston Baptist.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and he can run now.
Mm-hmm.
I think, it'll be interesting to see what he can do and how much gas is left in Christian Jones' tank.
Yeah. It's that was an interesting acquisition. I didn't think we'd ever see Christian Jones back up with the Bears, but it would be great if he still can contribute. What about and then this guy plays the outside linebacker position, but I didn't get your thoughts on him. Is Jeremiah Atoshu, who to me could be a real big time sleeper for this team?
He's going to be like Mingo was last year. Okay, he's going to be your. And he could be if Gibson, who was drafted last year out of Tulsa, now that talented guy, and him and those two guys will be your backup guys on the outside, and they like to rotate, and I assume that in the it's not really a new scheme; they're going back to more of Vic's scheme, but they're still going to use a rotation with these guys. Mm-hmm. And Ocho, he was playing. He started some games last year, but he's a backup guy that had 5.5, 6 sacks a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he's going to give you the plays that Mingo had.
Mm-hmm.
And Mingo was a solid acquisition.
He was.
Now, after news last week, it's probably a good thing they didn't bring him back this year.
How about?
But Ocho is actually an upgrade because he hasn't where the other guy was a disappointment. He was a top 5 pick, and he never played. He showed flashes, and he had a decent season for the Bears last year. Mingo, I'm talking about, but he just never lived up to that top 5 bill.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you about the special teams on this unit. Obviously, we're lucky to get our place kicker back, who had an outstanding season. O'Donnell as a punter is great. Do you have any concerns with the special teams play? We're expecting Tariq Cohen to be the punt returner. Who the kick returner is going to be, I'm not sure. Any concerns about what because special teams is that third unit. They give you great field position. They can turn, do incredible things to help win football games. What are your thoughts?
Well, the kickoff returner could come from you've got the rookie from what's his name, Daz Newsome.
Mm-hmm.
He's a kickoff returner. Demir Bird is a kickoff returner.
Mm-hmm.
Khalil Herbert is a kickoff returner. All these guys got kickoff return ability.
Yeah.
One of those guys has got to jump to the forefront and become the guy. I think they'll still use Cohen as a punt returner.
Mm-hmm.
That was a freak accident that he had when he tore his ACL. So
yeah.
You can't say, okay, you had the torn ACL, you can't let him do it anymore. I don't agree with that. That's part of who he is.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I know one thing when you make up, and sometimes you get surprised at who makes up the final 53-man roster, but those surprises are because the guys that are kept are better on teams than some of the guys that are let go.
Mm-hmm.
And the young guys are figuring this out. If you don't produce on teams and become a very good special team player, you aren't going to be around.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you expect Tariq Cohen to be at 100% healthy if everything goes well with his rehabilitation? Because it doesn't an ACL, the type of injury he suffered, doesn't that take more than 12 months typically for a full?
A long time ago.
Yeah,
I don't think you worry about it that much anymore.
Right.
I mean, to be fair, each individual is different,
right?
But he heard it early in the year. Was it end of September, beginning of October that he heard it?
Right.
So he's going into camp. He's 10 and almost 11 months out of having the surgery. He should be fine.
Yeah.
There's now ACL surgery is a standard surgery.
Mm-hmm.
It's there's so many of them being done. The doctors have perfected the technique. You don't have a big incision. Everything's done with a scope.
It's amazing. It really is.
So these guys, it gets down to the player doing the rehab.
Mm-hmm.
So if the player's doing what he's supposed to do, they're going to be fine.
Final question, and then I got a couple ones regarding the NFL in general, but the coaching staff. What is your level of confidence that Matt Nagy is capable of having long-term success in the NFL, particularly as head coach of the Chicago Bears?
Well, you can't take away from the fact that he's been in the playoffs 2 out of the 3 years he's been here. Now, granted, playoff situation was a little bit different last year, but he's also been playing with a guy at quarterback that he wasn't really in love with.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I'll say this, and if you watch the the ESPN draft versus the NFL Network, and you saw Riddick say, "I guarantee you, Matt Nagy's got his fingerprints all over this pick." Now, Riddick and Matt and myself, we all work together in Philly, and Riddick knows Matt a lot better than I do, and he knows. I mean, he worked with Matt for years, knows him very well, and I guarantee you, that's the guy he wanted. And so, where he might not be the guy this year, I think getting that draft choice, he's already here next year. You can forget, I don't care what the record is. He's going to be here in 2022. It's after 222 that, they got to start showing improvement.
Right. All right. I wanted to get your thoughts on this whole Aaron Rodgers situation. I can't turn on ESPN without them talking about Aaron Rodgers. And I mean, literally every day, there's nothing to report, but they pretend there is something to report.
And Aaron Rodgers is having a ball with it too.
Yes.
He's just laughing at everybody. And if you saw, he played in that little golf thing with not the American Century Insurance, not that tournament, the other thing with Mickelson and those guys and DeChambeau. He's just having a ball with it. I don't know what the hell he's going to do. I guarantee. I agree. He wants out of Green Bay. Is he stubborn enough to not show up? He might be. And I agree with what Mark Murphy said. He's a little different. Aaron Rodgers is going to do whatever the hell he wants to do.
Right. That was Ted Thompson, who drafted Aaron Rodgers, said he's a little different. And Mike Murphy quoted him on that. Probably should not have done it publicly because it probably threw a little oil into the fire. But I got to believe that he is going to play this year because he had the perfect opportunity to opt out for COVID purposes, would have made about 70% of whatever it is of his salary. He would have sat out, and then basically
you're talking this year.
Yeah,
I don't know if you're totally correct on that. The opt out was last year. You got money for the opt out. This year, I think it was a little different. Now you may be right on that one, but I think given the circumstances of a vaccine being available, they could have opted out by last week. Or a week and a half ago.
Right.
But I think the opt-out meant you just don't get any money. Like Eddie Goldman got money.
Right.
Okay. I don't think they're getting anything this year. Unless they have some documented high-risk concern.
Interesting. Okay.
What he played last year? What would be his documented high-risk concern?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And he played in a golf outing that was nationally televised and a golf tournament that was nationally televised. That part, he's not playing because he doesn't want to play. Or maybe he's going to take over Jeopardy.
Right. All right. Last question. Is there an NFL team that we should be on the lookout for in this upcoming NFL season that you think is just going to come out of nowhere, or even if they made the playoffs last year, you think are going to make a really deep run in this upcoming season and potentially be one of the two teams in the Super Bowl?
I think it's way too early to say that. Here's why, Elda. Every year takes on its own identity. And you're starting from scratch in training camp, which, starts in another less than 10 days. What is it? When they report? The 27th. So 8 days from now.
Right.
Wow. They report. You've got a turnover every year of a minimum 25%. The prognosticators, the media, they always go on what the teams did last year. I think it's meaningless. I think you got to see what happens in the preseason as far as who's stepping up and play. How are some of these rookies playing? Take the Jets, for example. Okay. Nobody knew who the hell Zach Wilson was a year ago. Okay, and now he's the second pick in the draft, and yeah, his tape is outstanding, but he also didn't play anybody.
Right.
I mean, yeah, he played Division I schools, but Coastal Carolina kicked his ass. Who's Coastal Carolina? So I think, put it this way. I mean, you could say, look at Trevor, the body of work Trevor Lawrence had or Justin Fields had, and who they played against week in and week out versus Wilson and then Trey Lance. Trey Lance played one game. I still don't get that. I get they were going on what he did the year before, and he only turned the ball over one time. He was still playing FCS competition. Now you go back, you watch his pro day. That ball hit the ground a lot as compared to Trevor Fields, Wilson, Zach Lawrence. And Zach Lawrence, that was the first one, and he was doing it with a bad shoulder. He had surgery like 2 days after his pro day. So I'm not saying that Lance is going to be a bust or anything. I get what people like about him, especially up here. But at the same time, one game last year and the level of competition.
Right.
So, and people want to say, well, Justin Fields couldn't do this and Justin Fields couldn't do that. Well, he got a hit that would have knocked 99.9% of guys out of the game and came back and still threw for almost 400 yards and 6 touchdowns, had the game of his life in that Clemson game. And he was playing tough competition every week. And the same with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence played tough competition every week.
Yeah, he sure did. Well, one more question then regarding.
Well, you keep coming up with those one more. Am I getting overtime?
I could talk to you for hours.
Zero times 0 equals 0.
Exactly. What I was going to say is, when I look at your office here, I feel like I'm at my therapist's office.
There's no couch in here.
But I feel so much better after talking to you. I feel like my life is on an upward trajectory. This is really wonderful. But the last quick question is, out of these quarterbacks, I love all the quarterbacks that were drafted in the first round. I think they're all going to be great. I really do. At least they're going to be average or above average. They're going to.
History says somebody's going to bust, or two
exactly.
of them.
So who is the guy that's going to bust?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, if you look at, part of it is I look at the drive. Justin Fields to me has a lot of drive. Trevor Lawrence, you want to say Aaron Rodgers is a little different. I think Trevor Lawrence is a little different, but he's a competitive guy too. I would think Mac Jones is going to be. I like Mac Jones, and being that he's going to New England, he's probably going to the perfect place for him. Right. And so I'm going to say, if there's a chance that 2 out of the 5 don't play up to the level of where they were drafted, I'm going to say Trey Lance and Wilson. Yeah. And maybe all 5. Maybe it's going to be like, 1983, you had 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks taken. Yeah. You had 5 or 6 go in the first round. Yeah. And really there wasn't a bust in any of them. Some didn't live, but Kelly, Marino, Elway all went first round, or all went to the Hall of Fame. Eason got the Patriots to a Super Bowl, be it getting killed by the Bears, but he still got them to the Super Bowl. And Richard Todd, he wasn't bad. No, he just wasn't in the same class with the rest.
That's right. That's right. Well, I got great news for Bears fans. Greg Gabriel is going to be here at the Barroom Network talking Chicago Bears. starting, I believe our date is August.
Right after the first preseason game.
Right. On Monday, August 16th, we'll be live for that show. It'll be 11 a.m. Central Time. We'll review the Bears' first preseason game, and then going on for the rest of the season. Most of the shows will be on Monday afternoon after the Bears press conference. And we'll be the beneficiaries of Greg's wisdom, his analysis of the game, what to expect in the next match. And we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to have some laughs too. So, Greg, Gabriel, thanks so much for supporting the Barroom with your expertise and knowledge and for signing up for another year.
Sure. No, I'm looking forward to it.
And when you get the check, just go ahead and laugh at the amount. Just
laugh at all those zeros.
Yeah, it starts with a 0 and ends with a 0. You're the best. All right, everybody.
Okay, buddy.
Thanks for watching.
We'll see you later.